Welcome to Preventing Brand Slaughter, your go-to show for discovering authentic, leading-edge ways to drive employee retention, elevate customer experience, and dominate marketing and sales targets without unknowingly killing your own brand. Tune in to lighthearted, transparent conversations featuring today's leading industry experts and entrepreneurs, breaking down stories of screw-ups, successes, and nuggets of wisdom every business owner or leader should know at heart. Let's get this show started with your hosts, Eric Sims and Jon Juliano.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Preventing Brand Slaughter, the show where we discuss the number one silent killer of all businesses out there, and that is the act of brand slaughter. I'm your host, Eric Sims, with my co-host, Jon Juliano. We're really excited about today's show. We have a fantastic guest. We have Stephanie Markese, who is from NextPath Career Partners, one of the leading staffing firms in the United States, has a very interesting take on the industry and all things that are brand specific. She's also the co-host of Live Bold and Boss Up, a very successful podcast. So we're very excited to have her on the show today and to get things started. Let's go to the show.
Awesome. Welcome to the show, Stephanie. Thank you for joining us today on Preventing Brand Slaughter. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
We're excited to have you on today. I think, one of the things that we thought about starting with today was just having you share a little bit about who you are. I mean, as a founding partner of NextPath and as a co-host of your cool podcast show, which is right behind you, Live Bold and Boss Up. I think you've got some pretty unique perspectives on business and client relations and brand protection. And so just first kind of introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, where you're from, what you're about, because I think you've got a little bit of an interesting background. You're not just an executive. You've got a lot more going on in your life than that. And I think that's interesting.
Well, thank you, Eric. So one of the founders of NextPath Career Partners, we started in 2018, and I come from a large corporate staffing company, and we started NextPath to kind of create that small company feel again, build a culture, build relationships. So that's kind of why we started it. And it's all about people and relationships, of course. And then during COVID, my partner Ashley and I started Live Bold and Boss Up, which is our podcast to reach out to the masses, help them with tips on their resumes and how to find a job, because obviously so many people were navigating in this world that now they was new to everyone. So just helping people navigate through that, and has kind of evolved over time. But that's kind of why we created it. I was born and raised in Tampa Bay, in St. Pete, actually. And I have two little boys. We're heavily involved in sports. So that's pretty much my life outside of work. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, glad to have you. So I think she's very modest with the way she describes what they've done, but I've had a front row seat for most of the part of the time they've had NextPath. Because I think when I met you, it was at the beginning. It's been that long. You guys were just kind of kicking things off. You've been around for a little bit. I mean, you've been in the industry a long time, but NextPath was new.
Right.
And I think one of the things that was so intriguing to me and then getting to know you over the last few years is y'all's hands-on approach. And when we're talking about like this show, where we're talking about brand slaughter and companies that do dumb shit that really messes their brand up, and most of the time we find that that's unintentional. That's why we kind of coined the phrase brand slaughter. It's like unintentional activities or exercises or efforts that silently kill your brand, right? Mm-hmm. Like we call it the number one silent killer of brands out there is brand slaughter. So I think a lot of the stuff you guys did, it really struck me, the hands-on approach, the personal relationship that you develop with people, because it's not just send me your resume, we'll see if we can find you a job type stuff. When I've talked to other members of your team, like Kelly or Ashley or whoever, Dan, whatever it may be, like people take a real interest in the people you work with, whether that's a client or whether that's a placement, somebody you're trying to place. So can you talk just a little bit about like your DNA? Like how did you guys come up with that? Because it's not the norm for the industry.
Well, thank you. That's kind of why we created NextPath in the first place, was just to create a culture and a brand that was different than all the other staffing firms out there. Because, you kind of, as a company gets larger, it's kind of natural to lose that culture and that great brand that initially started at. So we are very protective of it. I feel like the number one part of your brand is your people. And if you love what you do and you're passionate about what you do, it's going to come out and be apparent whenever you meet people and whenever you're creating your company. Same with you, is like, if you have a true interest and love for what you do, it just kind of comes naturally, and then other people can see it. So, it's not like we try to, market NextPath and do all this crazy stuff. Obviously, during COVID, a lot of companies weren't hiring. So it's just your true interest in people and caring about them. And we would have conversations daily, not making any money, but just how can we help? And I feel like, people saw that, and it's just, if you give to people, you're going to get it back, in the long run.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jon.
Yeah. So Stephanie, obviously you've spent a lot of time in corporate America in the past, and you've worked for the large recruiting firms. What did you notice was missing from the corporate side, and what did you do to change it with NextPath?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was you kind of feel like a number. You don't feel like you can truly make a difference. Where at NextPath, we're all about like focusing on the people. If you want to, you have a certain, career path that you want to take, we help people take that. And just really try to coach and focus on what's important to people. So I think it's, feeling like a number in a big company, and then really truly caring and focusing on your people in maybe a smaller company where it's easy to do that. You can build your brand, and then they're your spokespeople. So that's, how you build that culture and the brand that, you want to make.
Oh, that's great.
Good. Yeah, I think it's like, when I hear people say, I know this is really out there, but when I hear people say like, you're just a number, it always makes me think like inmate 67827 type thing, right? Like that's how a lot of people feel like they're like in prison, right? Like you've caused that type of environment. And then on the front end, you're wondering like, why are we not getting the results we want? Why are our people treating our other customers the way they are? Why are our employees treating each other the way we are? And why are we getting the damage we are? Well, it comes down and starts with, how are you treating the people within your own business, right? Like, are you treating them like an inmate? Or are you treating them like, Larry Smith, like he's a person? And so I think it's simple, but to your point, the bigger you get, the harder that's become. And I know with you guys, y'all have like multiple locations now. Y'all are in different areas. Y'all aren't just in Tampa. You're in Dallas, you're in Orlando, and maybe even more than that, since I've seen you guys are growing so fast, I can't keep up. But are there specific things you guys do with your DNA when you're opening a new territory or a new office that say, because that's where you start getting it starts getting hard, right? Like, how do we duplicate what we've done here in Tampa, in Orlando, and in Dallas, and all these things? How do you guys do that?
So I will say that it is very difficult to keep that culture once you start expanding outside of, where your core offices are. So the only time we've ever hired people that weren't here or started new offices that aren't here is if we know the people beforehand, or they're a proven entity, or maybe they were referred to us. But all the people that we hired that don't sit here or Orlando, we've known them. They have proven success. We know their personalities, that they are, truly care about what they do. It's all about the person. It's all about, who they are, not about what they can do.
Gotcha. I like that. So you guys invest on the front end and saying, hey, we're going to bring people on with the idea of saying, you're going to be here for a moment, but as we expand, we have to have internal resources that we can go give new opportunities to, that already understand our DNA. We're not bringing them in cold, which I think it's great. I think it may be a challenge for some businesses, even at that, to your point, like if they're growing really fast, you may not have enough people to do that, and you have to go outside. But then understanding your DNA, like you said, like anybody that maybe even a referral that maybe they weren't with you then, you guys are able to at least match them up and say, yeah, this person's a good fit. They're gonna blend in well with who we are and how we operate.
Or we've hired people from like our old company that we knew that they were, great culture fits, and maybe they weren't here. They were in another office from, our old company, but we know they're good people. Then we hire them. They may not necessarily be from NextPath, but we know them from, previous lives, and we know that they are, care and
on point with what you guys are doing. I mean, I think so. I think we talked about this before we started the show, but like we always look at brand protection or brand slaughter in three kind of buckets, right? There's talent, techniques or best practices, and technology. And I think it's still in today's world where everything is not automated, and in many industries, very little is, you have to have the right talent in place. So John, do you have any questions for her around anything else with NextPath or?
Yeah. So Stephanie, I had some chance to do some like quick research on NextPath before we got into the show today. So one thing I saw on your website that kind of stood out to me was, saying goodbye to I forgot how it was worded, but to the big staffing firms who don't listen to you or something to that effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, in my experience, I've worked with several of the large players in the past. And I think that's spot on. We've gone to them and said, hey, we need 50 individuals who match this specific criteria, and we'll just throw bodies at the wall and hope that they stick. And here we are. So in my eyes, like that was the definition of brand slaughter, right? Like I refused to work with them since that, incident took place. And then I went to another larger staffing firm, and the same thing happened again. Mm-hmm. So after it happened repeatedly within that industry, I had the, preconceived notion that that's the industry. Mm-hmm. Like, regardless of what company I work with, this is what I expect.
Yeah.
So how do you overcome that? So I'm sure there are other individuals like me that are out there that have that opinion.
Totally. Unfortunately, it's those recruiting firms out there that give every recruiting firm a bad rap. And we're not all like that. But unfortunately, those are the companies that blow everybody up, and, they get all these calls every day on jobs that aren't fit, because we have, companies like that aren't, reflecting good on the whole, which that can be any industry. But we try to change that notion by having conversations with people and proving them that we are different by the conversations that we have, showing them that we care. Eventually we get to know these people and get to know their families and, what's truly important to them, as opposed to just, making one call to them, sending them to a job, and then them never hearing from us again. It's all about building that relationship, but it's all about proof. Like, we have to show that we're different, not just say that we're different.
Yeah.
And that's something that takes time.
I'll give you an example of what Stephanie did when I first met her that I thought was really cool, John. So it was right before we started LAC. Yeah. I was shopping for jobs, and that's how I met Stephanie, and through, I think, one of her coworkers. And I had an interview, and she showed up at the interview just to make sure that I was there, okay, if I needed anything like that. And I had never, not only experienced that myself, I'd never even seen that in the companies where we had staffing people or recruiting people coming in. They only showed up when they wanted to sell you something, like to get your business, and then you almost never saw them again. So I was like, wow, that was pretty cool that someone from the team, it didn't have to be her, but someone from the team was calling me, checking in, making sure it went okay, just making sure that it was a good experience, that they weren't putting, I don't know that a lot of them think of it this way, but they didn't want me as a person being recruited to be put into a bad experience. They wanted it to be a good experience for me. And so I thought that was really cool and unique, just to kind of testify to what she's saying about what's different about that. I think they do a great job with executing on that and scaling that, because I see who the people are. Like I said, I'm a little closer view than most people.
Thank you, Eric. And also, really quick, because I think this is really cool and something that we just recently started doing, is once we place somebody in a job, we send them a handwritten letter from their recruiter and the account manager, handwritten, saying, congratulations, please let us know if you need anything. But in that letter, also sending them a QR code where they can go, and we will donate to the charity of their choice. And then we also plant a tree for each person placed.
Nice.
So that's stuff that we don't have to do, but we're giving back, and then they can see that we truly care. And it just kind of sets us apart from, other recruiting firms that don't even follow up with their candidates once they place them and they never receive another call again. So I thought that was something.
So I got another question for you. about the industry and where you guys are different. I already know the answer. So these are kind of like leading questions, but if this was a trial or something, to be like, you're leading the witness. But you know, I've had experience with them coming in and trying to get our services at LEC and other call centers when I was working there. And there's a place where I think a lot of them commit brand slaughter, which is they try to be everything to everyone. They try to come in and they're like, even if they've got no experience, they've got they've never done a project like this before. They've never hired or recruited employees like this before. They say, yes, yes, yes. And don't get me wrong, a lot of businesses, you kind of have to at the beginning when you're getting started. But I know you guys have honed that in a little bit. Can you chat us up a little bit about where you guys specialize and why? Because I think you guys do a great job of narrowing that like target area for you.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because you're just setting yourself up for failure whenever you take on these jobs that you can't follow through with or can't show up for. So I know whenever we first started NextPath, we, as a startup, you pretty much take on anything and everything that comes your way. I remember I was getting jobs that were for like a salesperson for like a shade store, hanging blinds. Like nowadays, like we would never take on anything like that because that's out of our specialty. So I would just say, we focus on sales, marketing, and technology. So anything technology focused, SaaS sales, tech sales, and then marketing, digital marketing, all that, focus and stay in your lane. Do what you're good at, because if you're working on these other roles that aren't within your field or your specialty, then you're going to be wasting your time. You're going to set yourself up for failure. Then they're going to see NextPath in this light and tell their friends that maybe have the right opportunity that would be a good fit for you. But now you just ruined that because you didn't show up for something that wasn't in your space to begin with.
Yeah, we've experienced that in our industry too. I think there's a lot of companies out there that just, they say that they can service a certain niche or a certain brand and overpromise, underdeliver, and all of a sudden their reputation kind of goes to hell in a handbasket. So, yeah.
People will appreciate it more if you just tell them like, no, sorry, like I want you to be successful, and that's just not, something that I can help you with, maybe, and then maybe refer them to someone who can help. Yeah. But they're going to appreciate that more.
I think that bleeds back into a lot of parts of your business too, right? Like once you identify who you are and what you're about and what you service or do, it's like your identity. And then you start not only attracting customers and clients that need that, you also attract employees that understand that and appreciate that and love that aspect of it. So, if you don't do staffing a certain way, and if you don't do it for whatever industry, like roofing or whatever it may be, that's okay. But you're not going to attract, you're not going to have people plugged in that's their passion. And then they're sitting in your office really wishing they were doing something else. They're plugged into something that they're really in love with. And again, to build that culture, it just bleeds all the way through the front of your brand, which is important in any business today. I mean, like we talk about this all the time, like customer experience and brand loyalty and brand recognition is probably the highest commodity that's out there right now. It's the biggest value your business has. So making sure you're doing those things to protect that along the way are extremely important. I want to save time to talk about Live Bold and Boss Up too, if that's okay.
Sure.
Because I know it's part of who you are and part of what you do as well. It's a big part of, I know it ties back into NextPath and it does all those things too, as our business kind of does as well. And our podcast does as well. But I think it's a cool story because you and Ashley go way back. Like you're not just co-hosts. I think like it's safe to say you're best friends.
Yeah.
You guys really live life together for the most part, right? Like you guys do quite a bit together. And it bleeds through in your show. But talk to us a little bit, like, what is it? What's the show about? What do you guys do? What's the goal?
Yeah. So Ash and I, we've known each other for close to 15 years. We used to live together. Whenever we started NextPath, I'm like, I have this girl. She would be great culturally, and she has a great wealth of knowledge as well that she could bring in from a different perspective. So brought her in, great. We sit right next to each other every single day. And like I said, during COVID, we wanted to be able to reach out to people, like to the masses, and help people more than just like one phone call at a time. So that's why we created the podcast. And we're like, I mean, this will be so much fun. We'll get to like sit down and talk every day and have coffee and produce this podcast. So it just kind of started off like that with just us two, and it's kind of evolved into interviewing business leaders, entrepreneurs, community leaders, and having them share their stories and successes. And we've met so many amazing people along the way, but it's focused primarily on like professional and business development. Like if you want to be better and do better at whether it's your job or just at home, we try to touch base, and it's something that we're passionate about and help people do that like in their lives as well. So that's a little bit about it. And we're probably at 120 episodes now.
Nice.
And so we're going on 3 years. So it's been a long road, but we have fun. And it seems like it's flown by, and we've met so many great people.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Who's the most interesting guest you've had on the show?
Besides you?
See how quick she is with that?
Jeez.
Yeah.
The leading questions.
I know that's not true. So I watched some of the shows, and there's people far more interesting than me on there.
No, we've had so many. I will say some of maybe our biggest, most well-known guests that we've had is Kathy Wood being one of them. If you're not in the industry or maybe in the area, maybe you don't know who she is, but she's with ARC Investments, and she's kind of a big deal around here in her world. She moved her company down here, and then we had her on a podcast, and she met with us in person, which was great. Also, the mayor of Tampa, which we just talked to her, of course, non-politically, but just sharing her story on where she got to where she is, how she became mayor and police chief. Like, she has an amazing story on how she got to where she is. So that was really cool. So just so many, I could go on and on and on. But they each have their own individual story, and whether or not they're like a big CEO of a company or someone who just, has a story of being a working mom, like everyone has their own story that people can gain from.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, it's been a very diverse group you have on like that. I think that's one of the things that's really interesting about it. And then you guys are like so popular in Tampa that you connect with everybody. They do the best. So I'm not kissing her ass because she's on the show. They really do a great job of like getting out and meeting people and connecting with people. And most of the time, if I don't know somebody or if I need to find out who somebody is, I'll text Steph because she either knows them, has played golf with them, been recently in their tournament, at their event, or is currently eating lunch with them at the moment. So.
Well, this is true. We try and we have fun doing that. I feel like that's what we like doing. So it doesn't feel like work whenever you're having fun and just out there playing golf or having lunch with someone.
Very good. So jumping back kind of to the topic of brand slaughter, brand protection, what are some of and I'm not expecting you to name any companies that you've worked with. So I'm not expecting that. I don't want to do that to you. But like John and I joke all the time, like we see dumb stuff. We've done dumb stuff. So don't get me wrong. Like, we're not perfect. We don't sit here and point the finger at everybody else and be like, we've never done dumb shit. Like, we do it constantly. We just do less of it than we used to. And we try not to make the same mistakes twice. But I know in our industry, we try to prevent people from making mistakes. And in the staffing world, I'm sure you do the same of trying to, people come to you and you maybe try to coach them a little bit on like, hey, I know you're looking at it through this lens, but can I give you another perspective? Do you have any examples of like times you may have prevented brand slaughter by saving a company by saying, hey, like, can you think this through a little bit differently? Or maybe you just, shoved somebody a little different at them and got them to change their opinion or something like that?
Right. No, there's been quite a few of those times because I feel like the biggest, like component for your brand is the people that you hire. And so obviously I deal with that every day. And there's been like a few examples where a company really wanted to hire someone and I knew it was a good fit and they would have hired someone, but then they wouldn't have worked out in the long run. And that would have looked bad on me and the candidate. And like, it just wouldn't have been a good situation. But like, there's been a time where I told a company, like, look, I don't think that this is the right hire for you. Like, yeah, they're great on paper, but it might be bad for the company and just not a great situation. So, having those difficult conversations where, maybe I would have made some money, right then and there, but it wouldn't have been a good solution long-term, and just kind of steering them, a different way and finding maybe a better candidate for them. because sometimes it just may not be the right fit. And I feel like that's, there are, all your employees are, going to be your, examples of what your company is like and your representatives out there.
Yeah, that's good. I think that John and I come across this. We were having a conversation about this. I think it was yesterday, even like just the conversation of short game, long game, right? Like, which way are you looking at this? And a lot of people, especially in a market like we've been in this last year, and really more so this year, where people are extremely short-sighted at times because of the fear of the economic situation.
Mm-hmm.
We're having to do a lot more of that type of tough conversation around, like, are you really looking at this and calculating it for the long haul, right? Or is this quick? And don't get me wrong, there's times where it has to be a quick fix, like it's just a Band-Aid situation. And if that's what it is, and you've identified that as that's what you're trying to do, and understand that going into it, I think sometimes as business owners, we have to make Band-Aid situations happen, right? But if you're not, and you can't expect them to be the same thing either. If you're not looking for a Band-Aid, you're really looking for a solidified solve or enhancement, then you have to kind of peel back and take a bigger long-term picture at that. So we see that quite a bit. I know, is that, and I mean, are you seeing more of that now, or is it kind of stayed the same from that standpoint in the talent area?
I will say probably last year was, a ton of hiring, and people were just like needing to get people in. So they would, pull the trigger quickly and just kind of be more reactive rather than, proactive maybe. So they were making decisions without thinking them through. And maybe it was that Band-Aid fix, but I am seeing more this year. They are taking more calculated, making more calculated decisions, maybe because they learned from, the decisions that they made in the past, but just moving a little bit slower and being more, careful with the decisions that they're making with hiring, at least. Because I think they saw these, very large companies do a ton of hiring, and now they're doing layoffs because maybe they moved too quick and maybe didn't think everything through, necessarily. But then it all depends on the company situation and, the time that they're going through. Maybe it was that Band-Aid fix. But yeah, I am seeing more of that cautious, calculated kind of decision making now.
What do most of your clients, when they're looking at, and I'm just interested because of our business is evaluated differently at different seasons, right? So when you think about like now, do they wait? And I mean, wait, like time, pause, like weighted, pay and experience and maybe like performance DNA, like you kind of break into those three components. And like, I know ideally you want to match it all up, right? But like, it's not easy to do, right? You've got like, there's this much money available. We need this type of person optimally. And then the market's provisioning this opportunity. These are the people that are out there available. So like, what's the heaviest weighted piece of that right now? Is it financial, or is it experiential, or is it something else?
I would say it's more experience, especially because a lot of people are working remote these days. And obviously salaries have gone up in the past couple of years. So I think companies are kind of swallowing that and knowing that they do have to pay more. So they're really focusing on the skills. Like you can have a person come in that's not qualified and they're sitting remote. So they're harder to gauge on whether or not they're doing their job or not. So looking at the technical aptitude, their skills, weighting that a little bit more heavily than maybe on what they're paying them. Obviously that's still important, but I think just looking at the skills and what they can bring to the table, and what I've been seeing is that culture, and that piece of it being a good culture fit is even weighing heavier than the skills piece of it, because, one person can, ruin your brand and not ruin it, but it can hurt it.
Yeah. It doesn't take a lot. People are quick to slam
Right.
you. It's like the old review thing, right? Like you go look at people's reviews, and people are very fast to go write a bad review. They're very hesitant to write a good one because they just don't think of it. Right. So it doesn't take a lot to damage or destroy your brand identity. And it takes a lot to regain it if it's been damaged. So very cool.
Yeah.
John, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, 20 years ago, let's be honest here, brand slaughter was still around, but it took far longer to tarnish your brand, right? With the lack of social media and internet and everything else, you really are just relegated to like word of mouth. Nowadays, you make one poor decision or wrong decision, whether it be hiring the wrong person or maybe bringing on, in your case, the wrong client to provide staffing services for. That word of mouth travels a heck of a lot faster now with social media and everything else on top of it. And to Eric's point, it does take a lot longer to kind of bring that back to the positive light. So I'm sure you've had, just as us, experiences where maybe you've onboarded the wrong client and you said, you know what, you thought it was a good fit, and then you found out it wasn't a good fit halfway through. What adjustments have you made, or have you had that experience? What adjustments have you made to kind of mitigate the risk of, putting the wrong person in the wrong seat or bringing the wrong company into your environment?
I think, just being upfront and communicative about the situation, so everyone's on the same page, I feel like it's just the way to go. And I have learned that from experience, is working with the client that's maybe not the best fit. As soon as you recognize it, kind of, approaching it and just putting it out there. Like, look, I really would love to work together. I'm glad we gave it a try, but I just don't think it's a good match, for no other reason other than like, there's probably someone out there better. Like, just acknowledging the situation up front rather than just ignoring it. And, we're shoving it under the rug. I feel like just everyone being adults and upfront with one another. And, that way you get it out there in the beginning and, there's no feelings hurt, and then they're not like bad mouthing you, later on.
Yeah.
So I think it's just communication is key, and just being upfront.
Yeah, because it still turns into, even if they're not a good fit for your brand, it still turns into it's your fault, right? In their eyes, right? And so
Right.
being able to mitigate that and just say, hey, time out, this is not a good fit. We're not going to be able to service this account the way you need it. It's in your best interest, versus later where they're just totally pissed off,
Right.
And even if they're the ones that are the most difficult to work with, right? Like, we've had that where it's like, hey, this isn't a good fit. If we were like to really have a heart-to-heart talk, like, you're the problem, but you don't see it.
Right.
So I'm never going to convince you that you're the problem, because that's not my job. And it's very difficult to get anybody to have that type of awareness if they don't realize it. So bowing out of situations that just aren't healthy for your company and healthy for you to solve, that aren't going to allow you to be there, is a good practice to put in place. I know it's hard when you're a startup. Like, I remember the first time John and I turned down business, and we barely had any business. What we turned down was probably twice as big as what we had, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, you're an idiot. My personal business coach was like, I can't believe you did this. Like, that's the dumbest. I felt this big when I talked to him, but I just felt really passionate. John felt really passionate. Like, we can't service these guys. We're not going to be able to make them happy. They're not a good fit for us. It's a disaster going through the onboarding process. Like, we're not even to the point where we're working for you yet, and we all already don't like each other,
Right.
So being brave enough in business to say, like, it's hard to step away from money. Let's be honest. Like, when you see the dollars on stuff, I don't care what business you're in, there's like, oh, there's this shiny object over here. Like, maybe we can make it work. But being aware enough of who you are and what you're about, and I think you guys do a great job of that, enables you to make those decisions to protect your brand. Because at the end of the day, that's a short-sighted $1 today, but it's going to damage me. It could cost me 3 clients down the road that are 3 or 4, 5, 6 times the size of the one I'm looking at turning down right now.
Right. And maybe you could revisit it down the road when the timing is right, or, maybe the timing wasn't right to begin with. So
I think, and I know we got to watch time, but I think one of the things that's really interesting about y'all's approach to business that I wanted to point out on the show is that, because most companies, like today, most companies have all these huge departmental type positions, right? Like, you've got IT, you've got HR, you've got sales, you've got customer service, you've got finance. I mean, like, every company is made up of these core positions. And then you've got other stuff, depending on what you do, that are even different than that. Recruiting teams internally are typically small. They're not massive recruiting teams. And they typically hold like one kind of expertise because that's like the core of their business, right? Like they hire for this because that's what they started doing. That's where they're at. So I think where you guys come to the table as a brand protection too is like, hey, when you get ready to go hire these specialty spots of IT, software development, whatever, whatever it may be, finance, like things like that, a reputable partner like NextPath really becomes a brand protection effort because I'm going to invest in finding the right person for these positions to protect my business, even if it's a behind the scenes type person that's not even interacting with a customer, on the front end. So I think that's something you guys do really great at. I just kind of want to point that out again, because I think a lot of people out there, to John's point earlier, they think of staffing and they just think of, hey, it's just some type commoditized thing. Like they shove people over at us, we interview them. If we like them, great. And it's going to cost us more money, or it's not, they don't think of it as a strategic approach to protecting their brand that they would want to invest in, just like they wouldn't want to put stupid artwork out or digital ads out on their digital media. Like you don't want to go hire somebody that doesn't know what they're doing there. Same thing when you're looking at these other positions. So,
well, thank you, Eric. And I will say too, that something that, like, as a company, as you grow, you have to be able and willing to change and grow and be nimble, because whenever we started off, we were all doing everything. We were doing sales, marketing, accounting, finance, like pretty much anything that we would do. But as we've grown, we're doing technology, and we separated our separate technology team that's all they focus on. And we have a sales and marketing team that's all that they focus on, because it's not going to be beneficial to have someone working on sales and marketing jobs also doing these like architect level, highly technical roles. So we've had to split it. And I'm sure over time we're going to add more. So you have to be, nimble and willing to change and grow, and to be able to, service your clients better and provide a better service.
Very, very true. I think that's kind of open to change as you grow mentality is a very healthy one for businesses to take on. And again, that is not a statement of saying I'm going to be everything to everyone. It just means I'm going to lean into what we're good at, but I'm also going to keep my ears open as to opportunities that we maybe need to evolve into, right?
Yes.
So very cool. Any last thoughts? So a couple of things I wanted to leave time for too is anything you want to share from a personal standpoint, like any suggestions, advice, mottos in life, whatever it may be that Stephanie lives by that she'd want to share with the audience about, how to lead successfully.
I mean, I would just say it's all about the people. It's about truly caring for people. And if you treat others like you want to be treated, then like they're going to see that and then, hopefully pass it on. But I think that's how you build a good company. I feel like that's how you build a culture, is just by truly caring about your people and your, like, what you do and giving back. I think it's all about that. And you may not, make money off something right away, but like, it's going to come back to you in the long run. It's just about truly caring and then giving.
Very good. So we're finishing up here with Stephanie Markese of NextPath Career Partners and Live Bold and Boss Up. Steph, how does anybody get a hold of you if anybody wants to get in touch with you?
So you can go to our NextPath website, which is nextpathcp.com. And actually on our website, this is a new thing that we added. There's a podcast tab at the top, which you can click on and go directly to our podcast. We have a YouTube channel that all of our videos are up there. You can nominate people on there. So everything can be accessed through that nextpathcp.com website.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on. I always love talking to you. So sometimes it's just nice to hear your voice again, but it's been great to have you on the show. Jon, you have any last parting thoughts for anybody?
No, Stephanie, it's been great meeting you. I've heard nothing but great things, and it's fantastic to put a face to a name.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure as well. It's been a lot of fun and a lot of great information that we talked about. So thank you.
All right. We hope the episode's been helpful to give you a little bit different insight on how to protect your brand from that number one silent killer of most brands, brand slaughter. So tune in next time for our next episode. We appreciate you watching.
That's all for this episode of Preventing Brand Slaughter. We do wish you limitless business success as you perfect new ways of protecting your brand through stellar employee retention, killer customer experience, and unprecedented sales and marketing. Get more valuable advice on brand slaughter prevention that helps you avoid messing up your brand by listening to more exciting discussions at lec4u.com. That's LEC, the number 4, YOU.com. Never miss another episode, and be sure to get your business-savvy friends to listen as well. We hope to see you on the next one. Thank you for listening.